Let's see. Hello?
Crap. Okay, I wasn't ready. I was cooking.
That's okay.
Hello.
How's it going, man? What do you want to talk about?
I kind of wanted to touch base with you a little bit on Medicare for All. So I didn't. I just literally logged on and saw that. So can I get a little bit more in depth about what your understanding a little bit of Medicare for All is?
So, do you want, like, I guess, what a Medicare for All system would look like?
Yeah. Like in your best like retrospective of it.
Yeah, so to make it, like, as brief as possible, it would be getting rid of private health insurance and just where every American would have basically this one insurance plan where you're fully covered, you have full access to the different healthcare that you need. Every American would basically be fully insured under this government plan. That's probably the
Well, why
quickest
get
and most simple way to
well?
describe it.
Well, why get rid of the private systems? What's making you want to get rid of the private kind of systems and businesses that kind of do
Well,
that?
so a couple things. I think they're incredibly inefficient. So you can compare Medicare to private insurance. Medicare, a higher percentage of every dollar spent on Medicare goes to actual care rather than administrative costs versus private insurance companies where they're very inefficient. A higher percentage of their dollars goes to administrative stuff. They're very like, there's a lot of administrative waste in those companies. And so that's one reason. Just I think they suck a lot of waste out of the system. But then I also think that you don't want profit in a system where there's inelastic demand. So whether or not you need healthcare, it's not really like a demand. It's not like
Wait. You don't want profit. Wait. Say that one more time. You don't want profit in a what?
in a system where there's a very inelastic demand.
What? Why? Because
So
isn't
yeah.
like
So let's think in,
picture like the iPhone. Like picture the iPhone. Like there's a demand for communication,
but
and over time,
that's a
the
very
pro-
elastic demand. So
so
think
what's
of
the
a vial
difference
of
with healthcare though?
so think of a vial of insulin. Whether a vial of insulin costs $5 or $500, someone that needs that vial of insulin is going to need it regardless. Versus an iPhone, if an iPhone costs 10 times the price, there's a lot of people that wouldn't want it anymore. You know what I mean? So that's the difference between
Okay, but
elastic and
for I
inelastic.
for okay, but for my mentality from that, kind of help me break this down a little bit.
Okay.
If I go to the hospital and I get prescribed like ibuprofen,
Sure.
my bill is around like $800 $900. When instead like a private company or a private brand or something like that, I can go get it at like Walgreens or something for like literally like $12 $10, and I can get like a crap ton more.
Who do you think you're getting it from at the hospital? Like, are you talking about some government run hospital that I'm not familiar with, or is it like
No. Just like any regular hospital, like usually like the
like
bills
a
and
private
everything.
hospital?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I guess that's a private hospital. And you're saying it's very expensive. I agree. That's why I think it should be a more government involved. I think because that will drive the cost down. My voice cracked there, but yeah.
But why? Okay, so if government gets involved though, that's gonna like require us to kind of pay a lot more in taxes, you know?
Well, see, here's the thing. So while theoretically you could be marginally paying more for, we're talking about the average American here. I think the wealthy should be paying more in taxes.
Yeah.
But the average American, say you're paying slightly more in taxes to pay for this Medicare for all system. You're also now no longer paying for your health insurance premiums. And so you're going to net be saving money. Or your employer is no longer going to have to cover your healthcare costs, which means they're going to now have more money to increase your wages, increase your other benefits, things like that.
But don't you think it would be better in like an economical system for like private people to be able to kind of like create like compete against other companies and create their own systems? And so like if you want Medicare for all, that's kind of like gonna drive a lot of costs on our end. Like my like say like an entertainer or like a construction worker or like somebody, I don't know what you do for your work, but like we're all gonna have to pay more for a system that is just, and then that kind of leads into a lot of different other systems, such as like for example pro immigration and stuff like that. If we have a lot of immigrants that come over here illegally or in different other manners, they're going to thrive off of the system that we're paying more from. So I feel like, you
So
see kind of like where I'm going a
So
little
there's
bit.
a couple points to address there. First thing, I agree. We should allow those immigrants to come here, and we should give them amnesty so that they can pay taxes and contribute to our system. But then beyond that, to go back to what you're talking about, so I think a more privatized system is where you're seeing these costs really go up. If we're talking about making sure that everybody has healthcare, because we have arguably the most privatized healthcare system in the entire developed world. We spend more money on healthcare than any other developed nation. We also
But
have,
we have the most advancements too, though.
but see, that's a little misleading because a lot of those advancements come from the private, or I'm sorry, come from the public sector. So, for example, from 2010 to 2016, 100% of the new drugs brought to the market, approved by the FDA, those all were used publicly funded research. So that wasn't the private sector doing the
O-
innovating there. That was the public
Okay,
sector.
but okay, understood. But that's still where and what country?
In the U.S.
Okay, so we're still leading the nation, like the whole entire world, in a lot of different advancements because it's a little bit like we have a lot of the private and we have
But they're
our
coming from the
focus
public
mostly.
sector.
Oh, and like, what percentage of that though?
Well, the one I just stressed, the 2010 to 2016 with those drugs, it was 100% used publicly funded research.
Oh, in what specifically?
Those were new drugs brought, like approved by the FDA that were brought to market,
Okay, so that's just in drugs. That's
like
just like one sector.
like pharmaceutical drugs.
Okay, so in one category though. But in medical
Sure.
advancements, we have everything from like surgical. We have everything from like we have a very very broad spectrum of a lot of different types of advancements all over the place, and those are mostly like from those private groups too.
I mean, actually,
Such as like private hospitals,
a lot
private.
of it also comes from the public sector. That's just one statistic. But then to go back into it, so yes, we have one of the most privatized systems in the world, but we pay more and we have worse health outcomes than other developed nations. So I guess
I'm
that's
sorry.
we have worse health outcomes.
Oh, so you're saying that we have worse health outcomes than like places such as like third world countries
No, no,
like
no. This is
Colombia,
other developed
Guatemala,
nations.
Africa?
So you wouldn't want to compare us to like you said, like incredibly poor countries that have been like brutalized by imperialism and whatnot. It doesn't really make sense to compare the U.S. to those countries. It's other developed nations. So like
But,
OECD or
okay,
OECD
but
nations.
oh, like it from okay, so like what other comparably against like other nations, like what is like the most like where do we rank though?
Very 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 low.
Comparably to like okay,
Like
then
places
who's the
like
highest?
the UK.
The UK?
Yeah, the UK has a very effective healthcare system, and theirs is even further than Medicare for all.
Okay, but then are they coming up with as much like technology or are they coming up with as much advancements as us and
But
kind of
so
helping out in that
But so
sense?
this is my argument though. When a lot of those advancements are coming from the public sector, moving to a more government involved system wouldn't get rid of those advancements.
Okay, but then now you're stressing on the whole entire country that basically Medicare for all is gonna be like costing people like me and you a lot more,
No, wait,
and then
no,
it's gonna give
we already established though you'd be paying less because you're no longer paying your private healthcare costs.
how is it gonna become less though? If the money has to come from somewhere, it's gonna come out of like my wallet in a different way.
No,
So
no, no, but
yes, the
you're
price may be lower. The price may be a little bit lower for healthcare for stuff like that, but it's gonna cost more in taxes, and it's gonna take more out of.
no, 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 but that's the point though. It's net you're paying less. Like that's the thing. Yes, there could be a marginal increase in taxes, but when you look at overall how much your money is paying, so if you're looking at the money going to taxes for healthcare, but then what you're no longer putting into the private sector for healthcare, you're net paying less money. And this intuitively makes sense because if like I said, Medicare is more efficient than private sector. You no longer have when you have a government run system, there's no profit in the system, so that there's that aspect of the money that's not going to be sucked out. It makes sense that that system would then become less expensive, and then you can also have things like the federal government right now, at least with Medicare, can't negotiate pharmaceutical drug prices. So like that's a huge problem. It is going to cause the prices to go up and up and up because if Medicare is going to buy those pharmaceutical drugs, but they don't negotiate the prices, then the pharmaceutical drug companies are just going to charge a bunch for them.
Okay, so let me give you, I guess, a better argument on my side onto why I'm kind of a little bit more hesitant for something like Medicare for all outside of the spectrum of just like everybody getting Medicare.
Okay.
It's more of like the governmental side. How do you have somebody like the government completely take control over something like that and then distribute it to all? And would you really want somebody like that having all the power and all control for something that could just be able to be negotiable based off of different prices and different other groups that you could go with?
Absolutely. I mean, so you're asking, would you rather be fully covered and not have to worry about your health insurance
Well,
costs,
like
or
I'm trying to
potentially
get
risk
your
medical bankruptcy if you have some sort of high cost thing that goes. Because, for example, medical bankruptcies, those basically aren't a thing in the rest of the developed world because every other developed nation has universal health care.
Yeah, but their government is completely controlling everything like that, and they can be able to set the price limits. They can be able to set a lot of the different things.
But
They
they pay
literally control.
they pay less than we do.
Understood, but they have control of that.
Exactly.
Say they could literally flip the switch and be like, okay, you guys can have to pay this. You guys have to meet this standard. You guys have to do that. They can set the parameters.
But like, I mean, these are democratic institutions. I mean, if for whatever reason, for some odd reason, the government decided to, in France, for example, they decided to triple everyone's healthcare costs. I guess arbitrarily is the fear that you're saying. People would just vote for someone else the next time around.
Yeah, understood. But like, look at places like, for example, Australia.
They pay less per person. They pay less per healthcare than we do.
Understood. What are the conditions that they are in right now, though?
Are you talking about like with COVID?
Yeah, with everything.
Well, what do you? I mean, well, in terms of like their health outcomes, for like if we're talking like not like the COVID restrictions, if they're just health outcomes, they have better health outcomes than we do.
Understood, but their government has taken complete control over the whole entire country and has mandatorily made I see the faces, but in reality, these people are not allowed to drink coffee out in public without getting arrested. Without, like, literally, they have all these different restrictions. That is just a small example of what happens when you give the government just a little bit more power and kind of push the lines a little bit and kind of like, yes, you know what?
But you're talking about something very different than what I'm describing here. We're talking about making healthcare a public good. You're talking about these safety measures that people are doing because of a pandemic. And now I think that a lot of this has been... Wait, let me finish really fast. I think that a lot of what's going on in Australia has been sensationalized. There's definitely some things that I've seen that I don't agree with that's going on in Australia. But I think a lot of it has been really overblown. But regardless, though, that's a different...
Overblown, like how? What do you mean overblown?
But wait, I want to clarify, though. So with Australia, I think that there is a big thing with a lot of it has to do with the fact that they think that they can get a good manage on COVID because they're basically an island and they think that they can, there's no reason that they should have a bunch of COVID deaths. But I think that there are other nations that, like every other developed nation, has universal healthcare, and we're just not seeing what you're describing. We're seeing that they're paying less per person for healthcare than we are.
Okay, but the comfortability of allowing like a huge entity like government control over everything that we have to deal with, like medical expenses and stuff like that, that's a little bit kind of concerning. And
I don't think it is. And the people in those countries would disagree because they overwhelmingly rate their healthcare, like their satisfaction with their healthcare, a lot higher than people in the U.S. do.
But we're still playing this thing of like there's sacrificing other different things, such as like a lot of different freedoms over there. For example, you can get arrested over in like Europe for talking very badly about the government over there.
I'm curious, like to what degree you're referring to when you say talking bad about the government. I mean, people do have like
for example.
Well, I mean, but like if you're in the UK and you say you don't like Boris Johnson, you're not going to go to prison. I mean, that's not really true.
How about this? You can get a heavy fine. Am I allowed to cuss or anything like that?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't run the TikTok guidelines.
Okay. If you say the F word to somebody, or you derogatorily like come after somebody in Germany, they can be able to hit you with a fine.
But you're talking about restrictions on speech, and I'm actually very pro free speech, and I think that it's good that the U.S. actually has very good.
Understood, but I'm giving you an example of like some of the things that are like tyrannical that these governments are doing by slowly pushing the measures of allowing them to take control over certain things, which kind of
in Germany they have some pretty special circumstances.
To kind of going over to Medicare for all. The only way that we can be able to kind of successfully do Medicare for all is if we allow complete 100% turnover to the government to allow them to control that and be able to distribute that and set the parameters on that.
But people are functionally more free. For example, if you lose your job in those other nations, you no longer lose your health care. I think that you're more free in that circumstance when you don't have to live in fear of medical bankruptcy if you or someone that you love has a high cost health expense. I think that you're more free as a result of not having to deal with that.
Okay, first of all, I agree. Okay, a lot of people are calling for a next person, but I want to leave this on a good note. First of all, this is a good discussion. Thank you for taking your time to talk with me, but let me bring up one last thing. With that type of thing, where it's like Medicare for all and everything in that manner, I feel like basically you gave a good example where if you lose your job and stuff, you don't have to lose your Medicare. But then now we have this motivation of like, or where's the motivation to actually like keep that paid for, keep these people employed that are like in the medical world and stuff like that are keeping that moving. If we have this system where Medicare's for all and it's paid for generally by all the working class and everything like that, we have people that are not going to work as hard or not going to be able to like sustain themselves. I'm very like pro independent, like minded, like work yourself, build everything yourself, do everything yourself, manage yourself. I'm like capitalistic type of like mentality a little bit. And if we have everything paid for by the whole entire government and by everybody's taxes, it kind of is not a good system. It kind of leaves this system of where people can
So
kind of like lazy and kind of like
I think that there's a huge problem with the way that you're framing this. Every system has people that theoretically could take advantage of it. I would argue that the capitalist system has a lot of things where people can take advantage of it. You have the Waltons who inherited their wealth, and they now own more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. I think that that's a much
okay.
better example of people that have very much benefited from the system without really doing anything. When you just inherit billions of dollars, I would say so. If when it's between that and then someone not going bankrupt from their medical expenses because they're poor, I would say like if we're choosing between those two examples of like people taking advantage of the system, I'd much rather the latter.
I see your point. Thank you so much for talking with me.
You have a good one,
I
man.
greatly
Thanks for coming
appreciate it. It
on.
was a healthy discussion.